ya danga to the lari chabo chibin ka dong do ma ro chibin samba jong do samba de chibin setalo lu do se wa taba de lanje ranje ten lamba was and what the samba ngos mo de la ngan samba taba de lo jiba da te chibin lu ta ngos mo de ba what the je da de what the Taji with Tom was one of the doing it to Kunju when the Sambatan, Yola Junior when the Sabani Marbe, doing it to Kunju when Sambata, doing it when the Sambat Sachi, Taniba Kunju when Sambat Marbe, Neba Kunju when the Sambat was the Lari Chamasaji, no level the seven do. Neba Kunju Ku Juni Sambala soon, Saji soon Rendua, Kuzu the Lari Chamasaji, Kuzal Tenjana, on the seven door.
Okay. So once again, we're looking at Lama Tsongkhapa's great treatise on the stages of the path to enlightenment. And specifically, we're looking at the section dealing with training the mind in the stage of the path shared in common with beings of medium capacity. So when we go through that section, in terms of the when we look through that section, in terms of the outline, we find that there are 4 categories that explain that main topic, training the mind in the stage of the path shared in common with beings of medium capacity. So first we have the mental training, and then the second category, the measure of the determination to be free, third category, dispelling misconceptions, and then a fourth category, which is ascertaining the nature of the path leading to liberation. So when we get under the first category, which is the mental training, and the actual mental training is renunciation, the desire to definitely emerge. So that's what it's speaking of. And then we find 2 categories there. First, the identification of the mind intent on liberation. So identifying that desire to definitely emerge, identifying renunciation. And then the second category, which is method. The method for developing that actual renunciation. The method for developing the mind intent on liberation. So when we get to that second category, the method for developing the mind intent on liberation, there's 2 categories. First, reflection on suffering and the origin of suffering, and then reflection from the viewpoints of the 12 links of dependent origination. So under the first category, reflection on suffering and its origin, there are 2 categories: reflection on the truth of suffering, the faults of cyclic existence, and then reflection of this process, or on the process of cyclic existence in terms of origin. So we've gotten through those faults of cyclic existence, and now we're specifically dealing with reflection on the process of cyclic existence in terms of origin. So it'd be very clear then if we start by looking at the outline of that actual section, the origin of suffering. Then the Sache Lama Sun, the Ewa Sun Lama Sun.
Yeah. The Niba Gunyu Ku Juni Sambala Sun, Yamuchi Chu, Lesu Bichu, Chibo Jolim Su, Saji Sun Redua. That Chibo Jolim, Chibo the Jolim Chu Marbe. Niba Gunyu Ku Juni Sambala Sun, Yamuchi Chu, Yamu Binetuche, Lesa Bichu. And then Lesa ne call Joala at Chiboa, Sajison Dictua. That then you move on. That then you move G. Twitla, and then Sajis and Dua. You move on. Jetta G. Jimba, Yomo be Joe, Yomo be Yemi, Saji Tombotele, Sunganon Tombotele, Jerendua. And then you move on. Nyomo cheta chi rimba, nyomo bi jo, nyomo bi yemi, saji ji dik do, tikuzul college law do, saji tul ngai suna ne ab marbe.
So once again, we begin with the outline so we can understand it. So when we look at this first, the major heading of this section that we're dealing with, it's reflection of the process of cyclic existence in terms of origin. So that has 3 major categories: how the afflictions arise, how you then thereby accumulate karma, and then the third category of then how you die and are reborn. So we have three categories: how the afflictions arise, how you thereby accumulate karma, and how you die and reborn. So we've been kind of jumping around through this is a translator's note, through this section in order. And now we're up to page 298 in the English, if people want to just kind of get up to where we are currently. So I'll let you know if it changes or we skip anything. But we've basically gone through the section on the medium scope up to here in this description Rinpoche gave of the outline and so forth. So we have then the three categories: how the afflictions arise, how you thereby accumulate karma, and then how you die and are reborn. So then the first category of how the afflictions arise has four categories: identification of the afflictions, the order in which they arise, the order in which the afflictions arise, the causes of the afflictions, and then the faults of the afflictions. So those are the four categories that we find under that first heading of how the afflictions arise, among those three headings under the major heading of reflection of the process of cyclic existence in terms of origin. Dixon.
Sanju Majawa Shibi, Shile Sanju Hotel, Nomola Grismarba, Nomo in the Sanju, Shebala Santa Sanjuni, Shebala Ena Santa Sanjuni, Wares, Reba Louis, Session River Shibi, Lotan River Shibasunji, Lula Ena Kazi, Luri Dun to Yowa, Luri Son to Yowa, News to Yowa, Lul Mombo Yodrawa, whatever Nana, what they danda, the Nomutu Sukalo. Nisu in the Santa Sanjuni Suyoas, Santa Sanjuni Suyot, and Yomuzo, Sandy Sanjuna, Yomu in the Sanjun Michas, Sanjun Michas, what the law was at.
Lesser.
Yeah.
Let me see where we start here. So we begin with how the afflictions arise. So when we're looking at how the afflictions arise, we have to first give various definitions. So we first give the definition of affliction generally. So there's the general word affliction. What is the definition of that? And then specific definitions of afflictions. So this is the way it will be explained. So we begin with first the definition of affliction in general. And it's defined as a phenomenon when it arises as disturbing in character, and that through arising disturbs the mind stream. So we find there's a disruption in the mind stream. So when we look at the word affliction, and we look at what category it would fall under, when we divide consciousness, consciousness is divided into two categories: mind and mental factors. So when the word affliction then falls categorically under mental factors. So if it is a affliction, it is necessarily a mental factor. We find that certain words are synonymous when we're looking at the different types of... there are certain words that are synonymous when we're looking at the points that we're making. So consciousness, awareness, and knower, so Sheba, Lo, and Ripa, these three are synonyms, so they're synonymous. So when we look at how we define these various things, when we define mind, mind is defined as that which is clear and knowing. So we define mind as that which is clear and knowing, and then it then is a category that is not, afflictions do not fall categorically under that. So afflictions are not mind, that which is clear and knowing. Afflictions are necessarily mental factors. And then the definition of awareness is knower. So Rinpoche gave various definitions. So he gave the definition of consciousness, so Sheba, that which is clear and knowing. he gave the definition of awareness. The definition of awareness is a knower. And then those were the two definitions that he gave. And then Rinpoche stated that consciousness, awareness, and knower are synonymous. So when we look at the explanation of mind and awareness in the Tibetan tradition, we'll see that it's divided into various categories, explaining it in terms of the 7, in terms of 3, or in terms of 2 categories. So we have the mind and awareness divided into 7, mind and awareness divided into 3, and mind and awareness divided into 2. Then Nisu Ewa Sheba Dang Semjung.
Sendang Senjung Nisu Ewa Song.
Sendang Senjung.
Nisu Ewa
The Dun Sum.
Samanda Semi Nisu Ewa, then the Ewa Mambu Yorwa. That Sendang Senjung Nisu Sheba La, Sendang Senjung Nisu Ewas. That sense number Sheba Jiba Marbe. That sense also make number Sheba, Nai number Sheba, Nai number Sheba, Ji number Sheba, Luji number Sheba, Iji number Sheba, Truma to Maruta. Tangasu, what the make number Sheba, Nai number Sheba, Nai number Sheba, Ji number Sheba, Luji number Sheba, Iji number Sheba, True. What the Ganga.
Then this Sem. Saying. Then Senjung. Okay, so when we divide mind, I'm sorry I'm going through various things. Rinpoche is giving a lot of definitions and divisions, and I just want to make sure they're all accurate as we build our lexicon in this class. So when we look at mind, mind and mental consciousness, we can divide that into 6 categories: eye consciousness, ear consciousness, nose consciousness, tactile consciousness, eye, ear, nose, tongue consciousness, tactile consciousness, and mental consciousness. So these are the 6 types of consciousness that we divide mind into. Dixon.
That make Nabasheba, Nai Nabasheba, Nabasheba, Nabachu, Masungalas and Dami, Sasamabe, Shegurova, Shegurabaje, Nisheguna Luzoni and Davanamudu, Zuni Mamushama Beach. What the Nabasheba Sheguramaje, no Zuni and Davanamudu, the Sanjung, Tuasan and Duchess and what the Nigari, Sheba Naluko, Sedig Chamu, that is.
Then the Yanjar, the Semjung, Seri.
Make it Navasheva Tangalas and Damaje.
Lasso.
Then Alula, make it Navashev could Tuanga Yomada, Tuan Duche Semba, what the Sukangalote, Navashev Chachilu Sarita. Navasheva Tangalas and Damaje.
Lasso.
Then Alula Zoni Damanam on the beach.
Lasso.
Then Damaji go the Ushebi and the Union Icha, Ujibicha, what the Sheba removes that is. Sanjung.
So the actual consciousness itself, so when we look at the divisions of the eye consciousness, ears consciousness, nose consciousness, tongue consciousness, tactile consciousness, these various things are almost like a mirror. And we have various forms and so forth that they apprehend. And then the mental factors actually make it a clear apprehension. So there's a discrimination that takes place, and then you have feeling and so forth that are connected to the mind that is acting as the actual glass that it's reflecting off of. And then the mental factors serve to experience that actual reflection mentally, so there and mentally and physically. So there's that experience of it that is the mental factor. Let me just look up one thing. Then the Semjung Nga Rinpoche.
That's Sanjung Mobayoro. That's head the Galas Damaje. Sanjung the Tanalul Beach and Damis. Make it Navasheva Nalula, and then you'll Jibashevi Sherab.
Lasso.
And then you knew it was. And then Duche, Samba, Yela Sheba, then the Seri Chamu.
So there is a clarification that's taking place when the mental factor experiences the reflection of whatever it is. So the mental consciousness is reflecting it, and then the mental factors are experiencing it in terms of feelings and so forth. I think that's it. So we have a feeling, discrimination, intention, contact, and mental engagement that's taking place with these omnipresent mental factors. So when we look at the word afflictions, and we look at the twofold division of consciousness, which is mind and mental factors, afflictions are necessarily fall categorically under mental factors, not under mind.
Niba kunyu kuyu jori sambala su nyomu ji chu lesa bi chibo jowa ne bi chu tambu nyomu ngozo wa je je nyomu ngozo wa jeta ji reba nyomu bi jo nyomu bi lebi je je ta tambu nyomu ngozo wa dala nyomu shi tseni suju tseni ni marbe shi tseni nyomu shi tseni wa de nyomu shi tseni sana ta senju ro do ma je wa shi bi shele je senju de nyomu tseni res Sanju Dosha Dang, Kondro Dang, what to Sakalo, Sanju Majewa Shibi, Kuron, Sanju Majewa Shibi Nibayo, Shele Jensi Sanju, Sanju Rodo Majewa Shibi, Shele Jensi Sanju there, Yomok Senja, Pasha Chenda Yodro, what that do, Kaleg Landir.
So when we then we find in the how the afflictions rise, there are four categories. First, identifying the afflictions. Second, the order in which the afflictions arise. Third, the causes of the afflictions. And then the fourth category, the faults of the afflictions. So when we get into the first category, identifying the afflictions, there's first the broad or general definition, or the general definition of affliction, and then the individual afflictions definitions. So the general definition of affliction is a phenomenon when it arises is disturbing in character, and that through arising disturbs the mind stream. So this is the definition of the general definition of affliction. Dixon.
Ta nyomu shi chenyi da susu chenyi je marwa, nyomu shi chenyi ta nyomu chenyi che dere, susu chenyi je, ta dene nyomu susu chenyi dila ta jujar, ta nyomu jujar ho, nyomu jud sho sandan duecha, kondro, ngaje, nyomu je mariba, nyomu je tezong, nyomu je ta, tanzi je tawa, ane tawa chunzi, Chuji da Tuju Chunzi, Lota was the Judo, Yomuju Tere, Yomuju Susan, Yomuju de, Dejaje, Kondoje, Najeje, Yomuji Mariba, Yomuji Teton, what the Tunga de Tamiris, Tami, Yomu, Taminga, Tawanga Jemanga Dua. Tamanga the Tawanga res, Tamanga Sajung Jugunone, Tamanga the Tawanga res, Shimanga del Tawanga im Jusenkaresana, Numudala, Tatanola ten Jetikin Numu Rigida, and what the Numu Rimoburo, Tatanola ten Jetikin Numu Ridule, Tawalo, Tamanga, Tamanga, Numu Jugunon, Tamanga del Watawanga.
So when we look at the various specific definitions of the afflictions, we find that there are 10 afflictions specifically that are defined. And when we actually look at and categorize these 10, we'll find that there are 5 that are view, and then 5 that are not view. So first we have attachment, second we have hostility, third, we have pride. Fourth, we have ignorance. Fifth, we have doubt. Sixth, we have the reifying view of the perishing aggregates. 7, we have an extremist view. 8, we have a belief in the supremacy of wrong views. 9, a belief in the supremacy of ethics and religious discipline. And 10, which is wrong view. So desire, hostility or anger, pride, ignorance, and doubt fall under the category of non-view. And then the reifying view of the perishing aggregates, an extremist view, is a belief in the supremacy of wrong views, a belief in the supremacy of ethics and religious discipline, and wrong view all categorically fall under afflictions that are view. So the first 5 are afflictions that are not view, and then the last 5 are afflictions that are view. So making for a total of 10. Big son.
This one. What the nyamu chut nol ta nga ta taming tomo nga ta taming nga. Shema nga ta ta nga yim tu sen karasna ta ta na la tene kuchi de nyamu tu ta nga la din sar.
So the first 5 are viewless, and we can call it that. It's just literally in Tibetan, not view. View. So the first 5 are viewless or not view, and the second 5 are view. And the reason they're called view is that in dependence upon those views, the other afflictions arise. So in these views, one has these views, and then these views give rise to these other non-views, attachment, hostility, etc. Dikson. So let's look at and read the Lamrim Chenmo, page 299, 299.
네 조린 상발라 송 녀모 비치추 텔레소주 치보 저런수 동부 송지에 다 동부 녀모 종 추들라 네 어때 코안도비 줄레도 녀모 버니요레스 주 녀모레스 레요나야 녀모 메나 네 코알 저런수 도마레스 저런토마 사변 연나야 사도 주도 류면나 요구제 도마로 어떤가 비송디사데 주녀모 레도 녀모니가 나네 코알 저런레 주들라 레도 녀모 버니요레스
라서
주녀모레스
라서
녀모면나 레단데 버요바 이나 다좀 비줄라 코아페 레모요레스 다좀 코알 저런토 고마레스 가르스나 네 해지시 녀모 봉사레스 녀모 봉사방이 송상 너 코알 지원해 두고 말했어. 레도 녀모니기 너네 코알도 비주 주도 녀모레스. 어때 담부터 용된 사례. 대제 다 네바다네 다 코알도 비주 녀모이 저 녀모 고레스. 녀모 봉발라 안나 어디 녀모 먼저 밖에 쳐버레스. 네바지 장지바 안나 어디 사지 송디네 다 동부들 해도와
숨보가래 사와 tambo the
당연히 버르진 러시아는 말이야
니빠 pomban gave the login the channel mumble lasso okay so when we look at this section on how the afflictions arise, Jayan Sheba divides it into 3 categories. First category, how the afflictions are the root of cyclic existence, and then the second, need to abandon, and Rinpoche said we'll get into the others. So this first category, that they are the root of cyclic existence, means that in order for cyclic existence to be created or to arise, it's necessary for the causes to be present. So those causes are karma and the afflictions. But among those 2, karma and afflictions, the afflictions really are chief. The afflictions are the root. Just like if someone has a seed, it's necessary to have the water and the earth and the sunlight and so forth in order for it to be produced. So these things act as cooperating conditions for the seed to give rise to a sprout. If these cooperating conditions aren't present, then it's not possible for the sprout to arise. Likewise, these afflictions serve as cooperating conditions for the karma to give rise to cyclic existence. So if the afflictions are not present, then cyclic existence can't arise. This experience can't happen. And this is why foe destroyers do not have to experience cyclic existence. In their beginningless lifetimes, they have accumulated these seeds of karma, karmic seeds of cyclic existence, or that would give rise to cyclic existence. But they no longer have the afflictions present. So the afflictions not being present make it so there is no cooperating condition present. Therefore, there cannot be the arisal of cyclic existence. Just like that seed that's lacking all of those cooperating conditions can't give rise to a sprout. So it's necessary to have karma and the afflictions, but those afflictions are really the primary, and then without them there is no cyclic existence to be experienced. Then Digsum. So let's now look at the Lamrim Chenmo. Read the Lamrim Chenmo, please.
Juba Sambala son Nyomon Pachisu, Les Obitu, Chibo, Nisanju to Tombo, Koandubi Jo, Koandubi Ju Ledan, Nyomobani Gujan, Nyomobatu in the Nyomo Mena, Hasajile, Tranlin de Bayojan, Lenton Salasuba Maybe, Saban Jinyogo Munduba Jinto, Lela Lenji Maybe. Dungen Junyogo Mundubi Shatans Nyomoba Yuna and then Hasajile Majan Tamatato Lesane Pombashama Nason Juish Nason Juish also de Tepato Marbe, Tepato Alchi Jushan Mara.
So reflection on the process of cyclic existence in terms of its origin. The origin of cyclic existence is explained in 3 parts. 1, how the afflictions arise. 2, how you thereby accumulate karma. And then 3, how you die and are reborn. First category, how the afflictions arise. Karma and the afflictions are both necessary as causes for the creation of cyclic existence, but the afflictions are primary. For just as a seed without moisture, soil, etc. will not produce a sprout, so in the absence of the afflictions, even though you have accumulated immeasurable karma in the past, there will be no sprout of suffering because the karma lacks the necessary cooperating conditions. Let me see. I just want to make sure we stop there. Le sarpa sa de cheran la Lobsang Rinpoche.
What the letter Nyomo Vaji on the quarter of Jews would Nyomo
Bless
Nyomo Mena, Hasajile, Tranli de Yojan, no quality of land to mothers. Nyomo Yuna, Lanson Nyomo Lesa, and quality.
So a further reason afflictions are primary is because even without previously accumulated karma, if afflictions are present, you immediately accumulate new karma and will thereby appropriate aggregates in the future. And then we have a quote. I didn't read far enough, so I just wanted to make sure I read everything. So the root of the arisal of cyclic existence is the afflictions, and they serve as the cooperating conditions for that arisal.
Ta kuandu bi ju le da nyomo ni jena nyomo tu yimi khung ka ba yo arsana pe chu je ta be sama na ne so les te ya na ne les cbc le na ge le je phen ni mai de chen je she ba se shu ro she da se ba ne yue na la yang zhong she ro na la yang zhong she ro she song be she song be she wa de ba tu ji sa de te ba tu le CBC le nagi siba kwa marwe sansara CBC le nagi siba ku 네 녀모발에 녀모발 본사바이나 시비셀에 나게유 네 다중발서부터 소줄라 코아펜지게 레이어데 레제 편이 많이 됐어. 코알 job 해두고 말해서 현지시에 세주로 현지시 녀모 세베지 녀모 본생베지 다중바 임베지 what is something 말봐.
So if we ask, where do we find this presentation that states that the afflictions are the root, are really the chief or primary? And then Lama Tsongkhapa points out Dharmakirti's commentary on the Compendium of Valid Cognition. And it says, the karma of one who has transcended craving for existence lacks the potency to project another birth because its cooperating conditions are gone. So here, craving for existence is referring to cyclic existence. So one will not have another rebirth in cyclic existence if it says transcended craving. If the afflictions have been transcended, if one has separated from the afflictions, they are no longer able to provide that cooperating condition that is necessary in order for the arisal of cyclic existence to take place. It says it lacks the potency. So the propelling karma can't give rise to that because it doesn't have that cooperating condition that's needed. So this is the reason that Lama Tsongkhapa states that one must have these. So in the case of a foe destroyer has transcended rebirth in cyclic existence because the previously accumulated karma lacks potency. It lacks potency because the cooperating conditions, which are the afflictions, are not present. So this is how we look at this quote and understand it. Digso. So the next... So the second category is that the abandonment of these afflictions is necessary, is very important. So the first category is that the afflictions are the root. The second category is the need to abandon them and why it's important.
Kechala teya nyomo shebala ralebe nyomo bala keba shawos wote niba insa niba.
So the second category is the need and the importance of abandoning the afflictions. So we read, let me just read the tail of this giant of the quote from Dharmakirti. Because the aggregates will arise again if you have craving. So now that all fits into the first category. Now the second category, the need for abandonment. Consequently, it is very important to rely on a remedy for the afflictions. Moreover, since this requires understanding the afflictions, you should become knowledgeable. So it ends, consequently, it is very important to rely on a remedy for the afflictions. Digson. The tsik chi. The ewa nipa tsik chi. This cheek. Okay, so it's just that one sentence there for that second category.
Nyomo bi nyeme what is it digwa nyomo ngozwa jeta chi jemba ne nyomo bi jo nyomo bi nyeme saji digwa.
So then the next category is the requirement of understanding the afflictions, so becoming knowledgeable about the afflictions. And then that is divided into four categories. First, the identification of the afflictions. Second category, the order in which they arise. Third category, the cause of the afflictions. And then fourth category, the faults of the afflictions. So that's under that third category in Jayan Sheva's outline of the knowing the afflictions or understanding the afflictions.
자 what nyomo jisu ngozong wa de la what saje je nyomo ngozong wa jeta ji je ba nyomo bi jo nyomo bi nyemi saje je de do je
So these will be explained by way of the 4 points: identification of affliction, order and of arisal, causes of afflictions, and faults. Ne?
oje ta de nyomo shi ta nyomo shi chenji do de nyomo shi chenji ane su su wo de na ne lebe ane tome ge wo de kundu le son do kun le tu le chu gan ane chu gan ju wa na ro do ma jo shi bi chenji de jo de se chong wi chenji ju ro do ma jo wa Nyomo de nyomo bi chenji dos nyomo bi chenji do de she song ba tar what she song su kun du je she song ba tar ta jer ma je de she jong mar ba kan je ba na shen ju ro do ma je wa she ba os what nyomo chenji de kun du song ya de dan da teres yeah
so now we start with identifying the afflictions. So again, we find the two categories will be here. We'll have two categories here: the general definition of affliction and then specific definitions of the afflictions. So it begins with the general definition. So where do we find this? We find this in Master Asanga's Compendium of Knowledge, where there's the general definition of affliction. It says an affliction is defined as a phenomena that when it arises is disturbing in character, in that through arising disturbs the mind stream. And then Lama Tsongkhapa puts in a sentence there to clarify it and says, thus when it's produced it disturbs the mind stream. So we find these 2 points made, the actual definition from Asanga and then the side point of clarification by Lama Tsongkhapa.
Oh, good you move Chenny to what they think to Sataroa. Can't you but the Senju to Major's village in Senju the Nyomo Chenny is Nyomo Senju is on could somebody Senji Aguroda. Nyomokus Nyomo and somebody Senju sent in Galas and Damache, then all what the Made Badan, what the Nyomo what then you said. Galas and all patient Amanamashi Marbe. And then Nyomo was somebody said in Galas and Damache. Then all over the ne, and then Nyomo and then Madeba and then Mariba, Mumbai said it.
So then the mind itself, so when we're looking at mind and mental factors and we see that the afflictions are mental factors, so the mind itself serves like a mirror, and then the mental factors serve to have this experience. So this mirror that the mind is compared to then apprehends, and then there we have the afflictions such as a lack of faith or ignorance or some of these mental factors that then kind of define that reflection or that kind of clarify that reflection. So or it's not really clarification, it's more of a response to the reflection. I'll figure out a better way to put it, but respond to that. So you have, when you look at some examples, you have non-faith, or we have embarrassment, or we have ignorance. We have these various things. These are mental factors, and they're connected to what this mind is apprehending or reflecting. Digson.
Making now I shall job and double this of Mariba, Numo 20 cent and Galas and Damache, then all Mariba the Numuka what they use at it.
It's similar to the example of the eye consciousness that is apprehending and then having some kind of feeling towards. In this case, we have this arisal of an affliction that is a mental factor that is in rising from the actual mind itself, reflecting whatever that is. So now we get into the individual definitions of each. There's got to be a better way to explain it. So now we'll have the definition of attachment.
Jesu chapa de rela thong shuba rela thong shuba jung kawa jin do de yang rang gi me ba la xian jin che ba ne me ba ta dang de wa kawa wo wo de de cha ge chen jin do de sa de ane sha na ge ngo bo 단 도샤가 매바들 이동와 질 미는 도샤 적을 마도 이동와라 된 도샤 적 마로 누가 여바 마이나 도샤 여바 칼란 주르스 유 두바 유 이동와 통하지 매나 도샤 적 마르스 두바선 이동와 마르베 두바 여바 마이나 도샤 여바 칼란 주르 모두 여바 마이나 시당 여바 칼란 자와시로 두바 여바 마이나 도샤 여바 칼란 유 두바 이동와 통하지 매나 도사 저거 말이스 유 모두바 통화도 매나 혼도 저거 말이스 두바 여바 마이나 도사 여바 칼란주로 모두 여바 마이나 세당 여바 칼란주로 유 두바 유 이동와 시 이동와 안내 시 이동와 칸바 요아레 마다我的 몬자 단다면 뭐有嘛的呗是与动啊몬자看不没见的我的不当不么我的移动啊通了den的下就用个是的是与动啊像那个我的是的看不到몬자了说吧那个与动啊他不当不么的我的说了den的下就都嘛的呗那个是呢是칸바당 카르당 워트슬라데네 데사 지그로 사동아당 워사 칼라 신부였나 데사 지그로 자동아 신부였나 오렌지당 워트슬라데 데사 지도 말베 시동와스 워트스인서 말베
낭기
셔 나기 유동와스나 다 나기 유동와 다 날다 이동와 초도 말 초도 봐 초도 warla tenden dosa chido marbe antu chodo wale suna na sul dosa chido
lesa
dosa chungdo
lesa
dosa gi yude peje reja yidong de jiro tela ten dosa che woden choje de marbe chola tenden dosa
okay so
shedana gi yuduba yidong wala yu shi yidong kambala soba 나게 유이동와 전에 말라서부터 좀 말해. ane 나게 유이동와 도와라 된데 하지도 그러죠. 유이동와라 미네 제수 차바데 레라 농쇼바 용가와 진도 내야라기 미발라 현진 체바네 미바다다 저거고스 뇌사도 어때 뇌사 생기도 받는 것도
Okay, so now we have the definition of each of the individual afflictions. And first we begin with the definition of attachment. It says, attachment means noticing a pleasant or attractive external or internal object and desiring it. When attachment clings to its object and grows stronger, it is hard to tear yourself away from that object, just as it's difficult to remove oil which has been soaked into cloth. So here it says one becomes attached to inner and outer objects. So when one sees an attractive outer object or experiences some sort of attractive inner object, such as a happy feeling, then one becomes attached to that object of observation. So it's necessary for there to be an attractive external object that one desires in order for, or an internal attractive object that one desires in order for attachment to take place. And we find in Nagarjuna's root wisdom text where it says, were there no desirous one, moreover, where would desire occur? So if there wasn't something to be desired, then the actual attachment could not occur. And likewise, there has to be something that is found unattractive in order for anger to occur or aversion to occur. So unattractive or just unpleasant. So it's the opposite of what one would like or be attracted to, the complete opposite of what would cause aversion or anger to take place. So not only, so when we look at reactions, attachment comes about because there is something that one is attached to or desires. Anger comes about because there's an object which one does not desire or finds desireless. So this is how attachment arises, what's necessary for its arisal, and it shows how the attachment clings to its object and then grows stronger. So we'll take a short break. It's Sawa Shera Yure. Khensur Rinpoche.
This one. What that the never the shot of Honda to the water, Jewel, Juson, Juson the Carasana, Chaji Bomba my matans, no more Bomba Jugores, no more the child of Honda Chetu, Chaji Bomba my bat, Chaji Bomba my bat, Yun Yawan never dance, and then the Chaji Yawan never, Kondu Yawan never, no more jail you the Yawan Nasuna,
the Tanyebo.
The Chaji you Tanya Wilson, the Jung.
Okay, cool.
Chaji Bomba my batan. Yun Yawan never done. Tennis one but the tree might be easy, tree might be easy. Then the Shakala just like you there, and what the Zun Zeba down. And then Zun Zeba, you don't want you send Mosandana, and the Shajon Marba. And then you don't walk, you don't want the la, and then could do Jay San Mamadana Condition Marba. Tree my easy, and your Mujun Towns, what the Juson
So in order for an affliction to arise, so afflictions such as attachment or hatred, aversion, there have to be three specific things present. First, there has to have not been a prior abandonment of the affliction. So in order for it to arise, there has to not be a prior abandonment. There has to be the object that one that gives rise to these negativities, such as attachment or hatred, has to be close. It has to be within proximity. So the object that, so the attractive object that gives rise to attachment, or the unattractive thing, the unpleasant thing that gives rise to aversion, has to be within proximity, has to be there, the object that gives rise to it. And third, improper mental conduct has to take place. So for instance, if we see a form that we believe is beautiful, then we put all of these kind of exaggerated qualities on it with our mind. So this is the improper mental engagement that then makes us become attached, or that we put all of these negative qualities to an object, and we find it quite unattractive, and think about it, why it is, give reasons why it's attractive, reasons why it's not attractive. That thinking is improper mental conduct, and that also has to be present in order for the afflictions to arise. Less so. So if one has abandoned the afflictions, then the afflictions can arise. So this is the first category, that one has previously abandoned the affliction. So then there has to be an object, for instance, in the case of attachment, that one's desires, a desirous object present within proximity or present, in order for this affliction to arise. So the object of the affliction has to be there. So then, also this improper mental conduct that thinks and gives all these reasons why something is attractive must be present in order for attachment to arise. And this is what is said about attachment and its arisal. So then we get to hostility, and all of these have to have these three that just mentioned.
Mandala soba the sola mean control number yongores, Samala soba, Dunge Nenalas, Colatena Dunge Juage, and Utila mina what in control yongores, Dunge Nenala mine, Kune Nasamba, Santumo Utala, Nebashawa Sambos, what then to get Karsore, Itmo Tela mine. And you the never shan to Shilin Sanjun the control Chenrezig. What does one they said?
So hostility means observing origins of suffering, such as living beings, pain, weapons, or thorns, and giving rise to a harsh, tormented mind that contemplates harming these objects. So in dependence upon these objects, we have a form of suffering that takes place, and then we become angry. We have sentient beings, pain itself, weapons, thorns. We see this unattractive nature, or we find these things as unattractive or repulsive, or repulsive, and then we want to harm these objects. We have hostility towards these objects. So this is how they arise. So in dependence upon the suffering, the anger arises.
You don't want to Shilin Sanjun Tanjigures, the China in the Lulu Shim Chow, country in the Lulu Shim Chows, you don't want to sell a gibby, you don't want to Shilin Sanjun Tanjigamato, you don't want to Lota, you don't want to Lotan Lat, and then the Chat Horijato Maris. And that's Haji Julia. Haji Julia Kondun Desayus and Jimaro.
Lesser.
What the love would.
Then the ducha don't control tun tugudu gang sena shejayen. Yene.
He don't want more. He don't want more.
More tun tugudu.
Jitrubesh. He don't want Jitrubesh. He don't want Jitrubesh. Jitrutan Sanji Turota. Sanji Julia, he don't want to blue. He don't want to blue. The shot on the Ayosina years of Maro. What is his Sanji would do?
Ale, legislation may. Okay. When we look at this, the word attractive or unattractive, we don't say that things aren't attractive or unattractive. So we don't say that there isn't this kind of nature that they can have, because Buddha is able to see things that look attractive and things that are considered not attractive, because they are established bases. They are objects of comprehension. So therefore, there are these things, but the Buddha doesn't have attachment. The Buddha doesn't have anger. So there isn't this kind of conduct. There isn't this relationship that takes place with the object and the apprehender that takes place in the case of an ordinary being with a Buddha, because these negativities aren't present. The reaction to attractive or unattractive doesn't take place. So there is attractive and unattractive, but the Buddha doesn't respond to it It just is. And the reason that the Buddha cognizes it is because it's an established base. It's a phenomena, and the Buddha cognizes all phenomena. But the attachment and aversion or hatred are mistaken views. They are mental factors that are mistaken views. So therefore, that those are not awarenesses that the Buddha has, because the Buddha has no mistaken view.
Ta what Lama la gawa to which what the Teba is, and then Chuma da bottom of gawa to which the Shari no ayu. What the lessons do could move.
Lama gawa.
Lama la gawa, Pama la gawa.
Pama.
What to took all what Papa Mulagawa to the Shai, the Shai
Yene Tetsun, the Lama Lagawa, the Pama Lagawa, the Ducha Yin.
Lama Lagawa, the Teba Yin.
Teba Yin, okay. Pama Lagawa, Tepa Dandra.
Pama. Pama? Prince Gawa, the
Ducha Yin.
Ducha Yin, the Guardian. Put on Mulagawa. What to do the
So when we look at attachment, so for instance, one liking his or her teacher, this would not be considered a form of attachment, because this would be under the mental factor called faith, or one having faith in his or her parents or liking his or her parents. This wouldn't categorically fall under it. But that emotion that's shared between a boy and a girl, this would be considered attachment. So we would say that there are many different forms of attachment and things that are not attachment, depending on what they are as far as a category and the actual mental factor that is actually driving the apprehension. So when we're liking a teacher or liking a parent, the actual faith is the mental factor driving it in the case of a teacher, not the mental factor of attachment. So there's a lot of different ways to look at it, depending on the actual subject. So number 3 is pride.
Shang Nagi Chume dance, Shi Yu Yagata Duga, Nagi Yagata Duga, or the Lamine, Nangaje Chigaris, Zanga Lamine, San Kimba De, two Naba Gentle Juba was Najes again, or the Jidala Tentis, Najak Jita, Jidala Tente, Jida to Kazaka Danzero, Jidala Tente. And she shall not get you. She you don't use on the never. Not give you on the never la mean and what the Najet Jigres, Najet Kimba, Najet San Kimbi numbers, Najet Kimba, Jabba and Rangachula Chabi sending us to Najet said you San Kimbi number generous, San Kimbi number, and then. She don't argue you don't want more than the mean, what the Shitaki Abbey in Yaba, two number Saint Kimba, two number Jet Juba was.
And she in the Nangi show?
She don't know what they Kamba Latin and I combat Buddha you are, I Morat Buddha you are, and then what the Tula Ten and Ajechi was. Naji, and the Sayat or to Salamine, or the Shivi Abbey in Samaji, Najaji or Ujerva. That Nagi Chu what the that Kasagure put on to Salamine, Riveta, what the Anazun Zebaina, Najaji Grova. You had Chibaina, Telamine Najaji Urota. Yashadagi, Jubaina, Telamine Najaji, you said it. Somebody never mean, Saint Kimba de. Two number gentle juba was two number gentle jubi shillings and the Naja Chinese or things.
Okay, so number 3 is pride. It means observing either internally or externally qualities that are high, low, good, or bad and based on the reifying view of the perishing aggregates, allowing your mind to become inflated, you assume an aspect of superiority. So in dependence upon the grasping at the true self of persons, one has this pride that takes place, this inflated view of oneself. And here it says, observing either internally or externally. So qualities that are high, low, etc. So externally we could say, oh, my food is the best, I have the best drinks, my house, my car, all of these things are the best. So in dependence upon these outer objects, we have this inflated kind of mind that takes place. So it says your mind becomes inflated. You assume an aspect of superiority. I have a better house. I have a better car, etc. And then when we look at the internal pride that might take place, we would the nangi yunten garre yanju surnang de bu garre. The
nangi yunten suzu zeba yunten chiba.
So these inner qualities, where we would say, we would think to ourselves, my body is beautiful, I have these wonderful qualities personally, I have these wonderful qualities, and then based on these internal thoughts, we then we have this arisal of pride, this inflated idea of ourselves where we feel superior because of our internal qualities or our external objects or things that we possess, that in dependence upon our mind inflates. She also mentioned the feeling that one has when one has a boyfriend or one has a girlfriend, this feeling of pride that takes place because of those objects. Jubo, mo mambo ngumena.
Ngumemba, ane karina jubu ina. Wada nga jushu yimpe doja kalsawar nga wada jubu yin habu nga je juere.
So we also say, for instance, if you are very poor and you were to say, oh, I'm very bad, or I am very, very poor, then this would also be an example of pride. So feeling like the lowest, feeling that you're the worst, is an example of pride as well as feeling superior. So both of these are examples of pride. And this is the definition of pride.
So
pride, the definition of pride is observing either internally or externally qualities that are high, low, good, or bad, and based on the reifying view of the perishing aggregates, allowing your mind to become inflated, you assume an aspect of superiority.
Mariba do the Lendilla Mariba, the Konanila Mariba Nigan, the Dombu, the Lendilla Mariba Dabudua. Mariba ne, Dejitan, Lenditan, Conchuga Rajila, Lumeseyu, Meshibi, Numujanos, what the Lendilla Mariba Tanija Horus, Tanga to Conchus Santa Baina, and then as to Shilmar, Meshiba's daughter. What the Chan Jawan is it? And the Dambajet Garas and the Mashiba Juro. Chewanga Shima, you had a mess in the Mashiba Juro, or to Mariba inside. Chuna de Omaruba Garasana, Mashiba Jurote, Mariba the Swing inside. Dambajet Mashiba. Dambani Mashiba, Marilendil Maribas, what inside.
So ignorance means possessing the affliction of misunderstanding on account of a mind that is unclear about the nature of the four truths, karma and its effects, and the three jewels. So here we were explaining this type of ignorance that is ignorant about karma and its results. When we look at the categories of ignorance about the nature of reality, ignorance about karma and its results, the karma and its results category, we find ignorance about the Four Noble Truths. They're not understanding or knowing the Four Noble Truths, ignorance about future and previous lives, ignorance about karma and its effects, ignorance about the three jewels, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. So here this is a state of not knowing, a non-understanding of these, and This is number 4. And also believing that phenomena has some sort of true establishment. This misunderstanding is also a type of ignorance.
So now we get to number 5, which is doubt, and it categorically falls under that which is not view. So these first 5 are non-view, afflictions that are not view. Okay, so Danger le dre gonchu song tetsum yoba meba tetsum yoba meba. So number 5, doubt. So when we look at the definition of doubt, the definition of a doubting consciousness is a knower which by its own power has qualms in 2 directions. So a qualm in 2 directions means is it or isn't it? So when we read here, then in the Lamrim Chenmo, it says doubt means considering those 3, the 4 truths, karma and its effects, and the 3 jewels, and being uncertain whether they exist or are real. So they do or they don't. So this is what doubt is referring to. It's a knower by its own power having a qualm in 2 directions. So 2 separate directions. It's how it's defined in the low-rig texts. Datagamata, Pichi Mataba Mendo Nabisalu de Donji Tudum res, Mataba Mendo Nab Sambatar Mataba Radio, Donji Tudum. China Betuzum Dagam Matata, Senyamon the Tobosating, China Betuzum is it.
So when we look, I forgot one thing. So when we have this qualm in 2 directions, we say, is there or isn't there dependent origination? Is there or isn't there future lives? Is it or isn't it truly established? So this is what the 2 qualm in 2 directions means. And when we divide doubt, we divide it into 3 categories: doubt tending to truth, equal doubt, and doubt tending towards the false. So when we look at doubt tending towards false, if we would say, is the self permanent? It probably is. So this is doubt tending towards false. If we look at equal doubt, we would say, is the self permanent? It may be permanent, it may not be permanent, it may be impermanent. So this is equal doubt, and then doubt tending towards the truth is a doubt that says the self is probably impermanent. Is it impermanent or permanent? The self is probably permanent. So this is doubt tending towards truth. So these are the 3 types of doubt, and doubt is defined as a knower which by its own power has qualms in 2 directions. And those 3 types of doubt there are 3 divisions of doubt. Dixon.
다양되고 지자발로 수능 중은 춘들라 토종서바 장면조로 토종서바 장제장 세바로 제반조로 소나 매게 메들 춘나 대바 말로 돈이 배진들지 매로냐비 특종사가 말이스 돈이 두아 파자네 특종사가 말이스 게데 돈이 들지 매로냐비 특종세바 있나야 특종세바 장제 세바 세바시 반주스 쿠이돌 네네 코아도 구주 태고레스.
So in Aryadeva's 400 verses, we find a quote that says, "Those with little merit won't even consider the Dhammamadrupa, the Longyanjo Sura."
저는 종은 준들라 토종세바 장문주 토종세바 장제장 세바 세바시 반주. 저는 매겐되게 어때 동반이 주들 토종사가 말이스. 토종세바 있나요? So,
Aryadeva's 400 verses that says, those with very little merit will not even consider this, in parentheses, emptiness. Those who even have a doubt, those beings who even have doubt shake cyclic existence, or even have a doubt about it, shake cyclic existence. So this is speaking about emptiness itself, whether emptiness is or isn't. So those who have even a doubt about it, meaning are considering it, shake cyclic existence. And it says those with little merit don't even doubt it, don't even consider it. That's very close to the exact quote, but I encourage you to look it up. It's in Aryadeva's 400 verses. So we finished the 5 viewless afflictions, and now we get into the 5 that are view.
Ngai she dagar tayu shiro nyomujenos ane shiro nyomujeno ane tela jiban mataba jita shibin jibat matabal kogores jisula ta chubasna mataba chuba
leso
ane toma yimbe de ane de kanla mebi jene mataba ta Tomi Tuba Yinji, Tabata Jibi Rajin Meadows, Watabato Meadoshi, Tembi Cheto, Jitula Tawashi Ming Tasos, Jita Wata Yimare, Jita Kanta things as Raju Jingata Iowa Karula Mine, Naba Harsambi, Sharon Yamujente, Jita Seni Yusmo, Raju Jingata Iowa, Nasana Ayas at the Marbe. I la mine the Dhamma Sona, what in Jita Imbere, Sharon Yumujente, Jita Che, Nai wasna, Laba Ngai Imba, Kamba Ngai Imba, Kamba Ngai Imba, Montra Ngai Imba, Imbi Chatla Mine, Ramon Truban Zebatuate, Nayon Zebita is, Laba Ngai Imba, Imbi Cha, Kamba Ngai Imba, Montra Ngai Imba, Government Ngai Imba, what in the mine. What the Shero Yomojente Jita is Jita.
So, number 6 is the afflictions that are view. So it's the reifying view of the perishing aggregates. Is an afflictive intelligence that observes the appropriated aggregates and regards them as I or mine, that is, as the self or that which belongs to the self. Here, since perishing means impermanent and aggregates is plural, the terms indicate that what are apprehended are simply impermanent and multiple phenomena. There is no permanent and unitary person. This is why it is called the view of the perishing aggregates. So we have this I that is a collection that comes together, and then this collection is impermanent. So the collection itself is impermanent. But this view, which is wrong, which is an afflictive wisdom, so it's called afflictive wisdom or afflictive intelligence, is one that observes this collection, these aggregates, and then the things that one feels he or she possesses, and then based on this observation, posits an I and a mine. So So one sees, has my arm, or my house, or my car, or my government, and in dependence upon these establishments, my body, my consciousness establishes the person as some sort of single unitary person. But it is not, but one establishes it as such in dependence upon these things that one apprehends, one's aggregates, one's parts, one's collection, and then what one considers his or her own, feels there's ownership. So in dependence upon these collections and these things one feels one owns, there's an establishment of an I that one feels is unitary. So that's what is meant here by number 6.
당가서 라바 나이 예반 좀 싫어 녀모제도 가자가 다니스 라바 대버도 좀 단지 추지 다니라고 말해.
So believing that this arm is my arm is the grasping at the true self of persons, but the lack of true establishment of my arm itself is the lack of true establishment of phenomena. So when we say the lack of true establishment of mine, my arm, then that would be of person. But the arm itself, when we look at it as a separate subject, the subject arm is not truly established. That would categorically fall under lack of true establishment of phenomenon. The understanding.
나 가자 말어. 나 가자 추도 가자니는 추로. 추인서 나 대버도 좀 되지 추지 단지로. 가자가 단지 말어. 나 라바 나 임바 대버도 좀 되지 가자가 단지 있어. 나 나라미네 대버도 좀 되요.
얘네 라바 추첸. 라바 추
라바 대버도 좀 되지 추지 단지인데 추도 가자니 추인 베지.
Then ngay labi
laba ngai yibasana ngai labasana churota laba ngai yibasana hotel miyongdu khajak danjire nura.
So when we say that this this arm is mine, my arm, when we have this my part, then this becomes a grasping at the true self of persons. But the arm itself as a separate subject, the grasping at the arm, not my arm, grasping at an arm as being truly established is grasping at the true establishment of phenomena. So until there has to be a person involved in order for it to be a lack of true establishment of persons, and the person's putting mine makes it part of the collection that the person apprehends. I think it makes sense to everybody, so I'll stop there. Stop telling it 3 different ways. Tiso.
Na laba ngai yimba kanza ai laba ngai yimba joro kanza ai sina kanza maro kanza yin se kan yor da jang ji ba pheji men ro laba ngai yimba kanza ngai yo kanza is ngai yo daba ro me tezi kanza ga dan zi res ana ga jenda la me kanza jenda la me daba ro me tezi kanza ga dan zi ro jita ai sina mares jita mai de ngal ma me be kanza jenda me do Jenda debato was with Kaza dancing hit, cook Kaza car was debato was more. So Kazaro. He's a good debato was with dancing Kaza dancero. Jita, my Jita in an alme was not sad.
So when we look at the lack of true establishment, the lack of true self of persons, my lack of true establishment is a lack of true establishment of persons, and your lack of true establishment is a lack of true establishment of persons. But your lack of true establishment of self of persons is not the reifying view of the perishing aggregates, because it requires this I or mine. It requires there to be a person, an I, a self, So therefore, it isn't the reifying view of the perishing aggregates if it's your lack of true establishment of self of persons, unless it's my lack of true establishment of self of persons, because then it becomes my lack of true establishment of self of persons would categorically fall under this. So it would actually be my true establishment of self of persons. So it would be the reifying view of the perishing aggregates, a belief that this there is a truly established self of persons. So my view of that is this reifying view. I think that makes more sense. So what how many permutations are there between Kansak, Dazin, Jita? Okay, how many permutations are there between the reifying view of the perishing aggregates and the grasping at the true self of persons? Are there 4 permutations, 3 permutations? Are they synonymous or mutually exclusive? Rinpoche is asking a question.
Jita the Kazak dancing Musum. Jita ina Kazak dancing Chow. Kazak dancing in a Jita in Macha. Kazak
That's so. So we would say that there are 3 permutations, because if it is the reifying view of the perishing aggregates, it is necessarily grasping at the self of persons. But if it is the grasping at self of persons, it is not necessarily the reifying view of the perishing aggregates. If we say posit that which is the self of persons, but not a reifying view of the perishing aggregates, we would say your the kansai jendai dazin, your grasping at true self of persons. The subject you're grasping at true self of persons is grasping at self of persons, but not the reifying view of the perishing aggregates, because it's external, it's not mine, it's yours. So we would say there are 3 permutations. Nika yimbo mu sho sirna? Less so. And if we were to say something which is both the common locus, we would say my grasping at my, or the true establishment of my or mine. My or mine, I or mine. So this grasping at the true establishment of I or mine is the reifying view of the perishing aggregates and grasping at true establishment of persons.
And
So when we look at the various texts, we would say this subject of those things I possess, mine, those things I possess. The Panchen Sunandrapa says that less so. Yene the pension Sunandrapa Garikelen the Kansa Mayin, then a Kansa Ine Ngai Ewa Kansak Mayin, then a Kansak Dazin Kandre Kansak Dazi the pension the Kansak Mayin, then Kansak Dazi Kansak dancing, Nayo Rangon Trubanzina Ngalami Gures, Laba Nayima Debatubanzin, not Debatuba Manziba, Laba Nayima Debatubanzin to Maris, not Debatubanzin, Kansak dancing. Then the Becha agenda. So we find in various texts, mostly they say that these things that we ascribe as ours would categorically fall under the grasping at the true self of persons. We find some differences, but we find normally where we would say that those things that are mine or we possess are not person, but ascribing mine to them makes it grasping at the true self as person. Even though they aren't person, the grasping at them as ours make it grasping at true self of person. That's what it is. So we find this pension, and Rinpoche said he thinks also Jayan Sheba, where this grasping at mind is grasping at true self of persons. Nge ewa kansag dazin yin jita yin. Kansag ma yin yin kansag dazin yin.
Zeba jita yin kansa ma yin. Kansa yin ba kok rangon ruban zeba jita yin chaba ma jung. What the Kuru Nayo around Ruban Zebati Narangon Ruban Zedi Waters, Karak Danzires, Kaza Maina, Kur Ramon Ruban Zebati Nada Ruban Zedi Waters.
So there is this object of which is mine is not person, but because I feel that I have this grasping at this true self of person that is ascribing mine to them, or ascribing that this possession of mine, we state that even though this isn't person, it's grasping at self of person because we're establishing the I in dependence upon the object that we're establishing as mine. So by establishing that which is mine, we're establishing the I, which is possessing it. Therefore, it is the grasping at self of persons, because we're establishing a person based on a possession that the person has. Diso.
Ta shirama dudba rajuba omaba jirota shirama dudba jita dovate ngada ngayo lamine raja to be zero jita rapares jita raba
Ran
shirama dudba and dudba what the suke jita shosna ngada ngayo lamine raja to be zero to be zebatal jilshagres
Raja to be zu.
to be zero to be zero pumbalo ngazwal mateba zonde jabata da.
So in the Great Exposition School and the Sutra School, when we asked to posit the reifying view of the perishing aggregates, we find, I'm going to miss one sentence here, I apologize, I got to look it up, but we find a very coarse form of this self of persons that state that is established by this I and mine. But solely this self of person, tatsuta. I'm missing three words, so I'm not able to clarify it. But the point is that it's a very coarse reifying view of the perishing aggregates. It's not a subtle one. It's a coarse form. It shows the absence of self. And then this is the opposite of the absence of self in that school, in those lower schools.
What Danjita about the trauma, what then shad water, Uma Tajuba Jena Ramon Ruben Zimbabwe, Jagarwa, Rajuba Jena Rajubi, Debat Ruben Zimbabwe, Jagarwata.
In the middle way school, in the middle way autonomy, in the middle way consequence school, we find that there is this feeling of independently, the grasping at some sort of independent establishment is this reifying view, is this grasping at an independent or a separate establishment. And the autonomy school would also say that is the reifying view of the perishing aggregates, is this independent establishment of this I, this independent establishment of mind. And so that with the middle way school establishes it is that. It's something to do with the mind in the lower schools, because it's just the emptiness of self is established in the lower schools, but not a phenomena. So there's some sort of, I just have to look it up.
Yes.
Just to clarify, so my car is the emptiness of person, because I'm establishing a self or mind.
Mota Zimba, the Demi Drupa Zimba Garienba. Nge Mota. So this would be grasping at the self of phenomena. The Lapa Okay, so if we're saying my hand is I, then it's the grasping at the self of the Lapa Ngai Yimba. If we're saying that my arm is me, or I, grasping at the arm as my, then it becomes the grasping at the self of persons. But if we're saying grasping at the arm itself, the arm is, then that becomes grasping at the true self of phenomenon. So if we're saying that the arm is me, grasping at this arm is me, this arm is me, then this is grasping at self of persons. If we're grasping at the true establishment of just arm, then this becomes the grasping at the true establishment of phenomena. So your car would be phenomena, but if you were saying your car is you somehow, if you established you as your car, then that would be persons. Make sense? We slowly think about it, then you'll understand these things. Decent. Okay, so we'll do the concluding mandala offering and dedication prayer. I apologize for any confusion, but it really requires knowing kind of these outlines and then where the points are fitting into in order to understand some of this stuff. Because Rinpoche was just saying them straight out as quick definitions and divisions without really a lot of points around them. So in the parts where I was translating as such, that really was the way it was being presented. And it was more of like a, here's some information you can later go look into, just as a note, because it was just kind of put out in little parts. So concluding mandala offering and dedication prayer. The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. I dedicate whatever virtues I have collected for the benefit of the teachings and of all sentient beings, and in particular for the essential teachings of Venerable Losang Drapa to shine forever. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. I dedicate all this virtue to emulate the knowledge of the hero Manjushri and likewise Samantabhadra as well, with whatever dedication is praised as supreme by all the Christians who traverse the 3 times. I also dedicate all my roots of virtue for the sake of auspicious deeds. In that pure land surrounded by snowy mountains, you are the source of all benefit and happiness, all powerful. Yeshvara Tenzin Yatso, stay until samsara is end. I pray for the long life of the precious Khensur Wandak, upholder of scriptural and realizational doctrines, the spiritual friend who trained extensively in the 5 great philosophical texts with exceptional wisdom and perseverance. Tuji Rinpoche Guji Shabi Denpa, Lamrim Chenmo Kompatria.